everyone, I'm Ashni Joshi and today I'm going to be teaching you all light part 1. So this chapter will have many parts. It will have 3 to 4 parts and today we'll be getting done with light part 1. So let's get started. Let me just share my screen. So light part 1. Before going into it, we should know what is light. We study light so much, but what is light essentially? An object is visible to us. We can see an object when the light falling on the object bounces back into our eyes. If we take an example of this AC remote, if this is the object and the light is coming like this, it bounces back into our eyes. So it will come like this and go into our eyes. That is how we see this object. It is also important for us to note that light itself cannot be seen, but other objects in the presence of light can be seen. So now what does this mean? It means that the light, we can't actually see light, but we can see several other objects in the presence of light. Like now there is light in the room that I am sitting in, which is why I can see objects like this remote, like this clock. Otherwise, I couldn't see it if there wasn't any light in this room. Now, this point is more like the definition of light. Light is a form of an external physical cause that affects our eye to produce the sensation of vision. So it impacts our eye in a certain way by which we can see things and we can observe things. Light does not require a medium for its propagation, unlike sound. So when we learned about sound, we learned that sound requires a medium for its propagation. Sound can't travel in vacuum. You can't hear each other on the moon. But light does not require a medium for its propagation. The best example for it is that we see the sun up in the sky every day, right? So now this light that comes from the sun travels all the way from the sun to the earth through vacuum, which is why we know that light does not require a medium for its propagation. Now we come to how we actually see objects. Remember when I told you about light bouncing back off surfaces? This describes it in a little more detail. During the day, we can see objects due to the light received by the sun. So during the day, the sun acts as the source of light. So if it was daylight right now, then I need not have to turn on my tube light in order to look at this object. The light of the sun would just come on the surface, bounce back and go into my eyes, and then I could see the surface. But because it is nighttime and we don't have the sun up in the sky right now, I have to switch on my tube light, I have to switch on a lamp or any other artificial source of light in order to see objects. If we look at this diagram here, we can see the light from the sun, which is in yellow, landing on the moon and bouncing back and coming to the earth. This tells us that moon doesn't have its own source of light. Another better explanation for this is in the second point. An object which can give out light can be called a source of light. So we know that the sun is a source of light because the sun gives out light. Every object does not have its own source of light. The light emitted by a source of light enables us to see other objects. So if we look at the example of the sun, the moon, and the earth, the sun is the source of light. Let's say the earth is our eyes. We can see the moon because the sun acts as a source of light and the light from the sun bounces back from the moon and reaches the earth, which is why we can see the moon. Moon in itself does not produce any light. In the first picture, as you can see, this is an insect which has its own source of light. Let's learn more about this. So before doing that, we should know that there are two types of sources of light. We have natural sources of light and we have artificial sources of light. Under natural sources, we have the sun, which we already know, and a very interesting phenomena called bioluminescence. So what is this? It's when a living organism emits light. We are a living organism. Animals are a living organism. Insects are a living organism. When we emit light from ourselves, that is called bioluminescence. Now, humans and animals don't emit light, but certain insects do. The emission of light by a living organism as a result of some chemical energy getting converted to light energy is called bioluminescence. In the picture shown is an insect called Junu, which emits light on its own and has its own source of light. If we come to artificial sources of light, this is very familiar. We have an electric torch and a tube light as an artificial source of light. Now, an artificial basically means something that we have made and not something that was already there. So we have made the electric torch, we have made the tube light, and these act as sources of light when the sun isn't there as a source of light. Now let's look into these three types of bodies: incandescent bodies, luminous bodies, and non-luminous bodies. When a body emits light when it's heated to a very high temperature, it's called an incandescent body. Now, the best example for this is a glowing bulb. You can't touch a glowing bulb because we know it's so hot, right? So that is basically what incandescent bodies are. Now, if we look to learn about luminous bodies, objects which emit their own light are called luminous bodies, and objects which don't emit their own light, they do not have their own light, are called non-luminous objects. So luminous objects, we already learned about the sun, electric torch, tube light, all of that. Now, non-luminous objects can be anything. It can be this remote, it can be the earth, because even earth doesn't have its own source of light. It can be a book, it can be a pen, it can be this clock, because it doesn't have its own source of light. That can be classified as a non-luminous object. Now let's come to the last part of today's session, called scattering of light. So why is it suddenly very bright as soon as the sun is up in the sky? Why does that happen? That happens due to a very important phenomena called scattering of light. So basically, there are a lot of dust particles and molecules in the atmosphere. When the sun's rays enter the atmosphere, all these particles absorb and re-emit this light in all directions. Because this light is emitted in all directions from so many molecules, it seems to us that there is light all over the place. Everywhere there is light, and it's so bright everywhere. That is what happens after sunrise. But during night, it's the exact opposite. Thank you. This was the end of light part 1. I hope you guys understood everything. I really enjoyed teaching you light part 1. Looking forward to seeing you all again in the further parts of light. Bye.